Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now today we're going to talk about 10 great or good games that were almost ruined by terrible controls. And to help me with this video, I've assembled the MetalJesus crew, and we're going to start with John Hancock, although, are we interrupting you, buddy?
Good games, bad control. Here are my picks. Looking at you, Nintendo 64, there were some great games on the console, but there was a few that needed some help. First up, Tarak. Tarak was a good game, though it really could have benefited from a different control scheme. I know why the developers went with the control scheme, but it's just clunky. I never enjoyed playing this game. I know it's popular, I know it sold well, but for me, the control of GoldenEye or something was more of a fit. So yeah, I really didn't like the control of that game. Next up is a game that's a great game that's completely unnecessary on Nintendo 64, and that's StarCraft 64. And while they made it work, the challenge of individually selecting an individual unit on the game, the difficulty of backtracking the game and some other things, it just didn't work. And so StarCraft 64 is just an example of a port of a game that, looking at the controls should have never been done. Those are my picks. I'm gonna get back to my shower now.
Well, this is awkward. My eyes are up here. How you feeling? John Riggs here, talking about games that would be great if it wasn't for their terrible controls. A couple of them come to mind. One of them is a game called Trojan. Came out for the arcade, came out for the NES, classic Capcom, post-apocalyptic world and all that. What makes this game with the terrible controls is one simple idea, that up should never be jump on a platformer. Now, it's not really a platformer. However, you have two buttons on there. One of them is your sword, one of them is your shield. One of them could have been jump, and shield could have been anything else. Maybe hit both buttons at the same time or something, I don't know, but they made it so up was jump, and on the arcade too, so it's not like some, the arcade has 3 buttons, NES has 2 buttons, I understand that. However, not a good look, man, not for Trojan anyway. The other one that comes to mind for great games with terrible controls, and it would be a lot better of a game if it wasn't for the controls, is Kid Icarus for the 3DS. Man, I was waiting for Kid Icarus, I was waiting for a proper sequel to Kid Icarus for such a long time. And then we got it on the 3DS, and it plays like an on-rail shooter, which is fine. However, unfortunately, you have to control your character and then also touch screen. And I try not to use my touch screen whenever possible. I hate touching the screen. I know it defeats the purpose of having a touch screen. But you have to control your character and push the thing down. And I think you have to hit another button or something like that. And my hands don't manipulate as well as they used to. So it's I couldn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to enjoy it, unfortunately. So those are my 2 picks. And you're in my mailbox for some reason, but it's okay. I have to get the mail anyway, so take care. We'll see you.
So, some games that I think are really fantastic, but they definitely suffer in the area of controls is number 1, everyone loves it, but Mass Effect. Alright, so real talk. The Mass Effect trilogy is great. Well, 2 is great. 2 is great! It kind of built on everything that Mass Effect 1, had already started. But, yes, Mass Effect 1 has great characters. Yes, Mass Effect 1 has a fantastic storyline. But the controls and the combat are so frustrating, and the AI is kind of dumb. So, all that stuff combined, it makes, to put it in perspective, I replayed Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. But once I played this, I kind of didn't need to play it again. I also didn't play it when it first came out because, well, I started it and I was like, this game's frustrating. But then when Mass Effect 2 came out and everyone was raving about it, that's when finally I was like, okay, I gotta play through Mass Effect 1 so I can play Mass Effect 2, and I got through it, and then I loved 2. And another one is Deadly Premonition, and this game has grown a huge, cult following. It's such a cool, Twin Peaksy kind of you're solving murders and things like that. It's so cool and it's so quirky and the dialogue's so weird and I just absolutely love it. But, it basically has tank controls, a bad camera angle, and it's just all kinds of horrible. It's sort of a controls train wreck. And a really good example of what can be done when a game does have this, great, cult following and people love it is they released the Deadly Premonition Director's Cut on PS3. And this is totally the definitive version. They fixed, a lot of the bad controls. They added motion controls. But you can turn those off. But, so this is an example of how bad controls can be fixed, but this is not definitely a route that all studios can take. Typically, like indie studios and things like that, re-releasing their game can be kind of expensive and difficult. So not everyone can do that. But, there's so many games like this. Even Parappa with its timing. But, when the controls are frustrating, it makes it so hard to enjoy an otherwise fantastic game.
Alright guys, definitely 2 games for me. Shadow of the Colossus, the original and the remake. The original, I think I got used to the controls fast because I was just very pumped up to play the game at the time. A semi-sequel to Ico. I was just ready to go. But now, years later, the remake, and they pretty much use the same controls. It's just hard for me to play it. I barely got past the first Colossus. I don't know if other people have the same problems as me with it, with the controls, but it just feels really awkward. Like camera angle, turning around on the horse, standing up on the horse, looking for Colossus. It seems like the camera's just trying to position itself all the time, and it just can be confusing, and it kind of takes away from the experience for me. But some people could get past that. Hopefully most of you will. Hopefully I will someday. I don't know. I'm going to try it again. But definitely Shadow of the Colossus is my #1 game. Next game, probably the most sought after PS2 game in America, Rule of Rose. For those of you who don't just throw the game on your shelf when you buy it and actually play through it, you're going to notice right away the controls are clunky. And not only are they clunky, but the hit detection is so off in that game, it almost killed it for me in the game. The only saving grace this game has is the compelling storyline. If you like storylines like I do, that's the game's strong point. Other than that, it's very frustrating. So Rule of Rose is definitely on my list.
So I want to talk about Syphon Filter Dark Mirror on the PSP. Now this also came out on the PlayStation 2, which I suspect is probably the better version because, as you guys know, the PSP only has 1 thumbstick. Now this game is a third-person action shooter stealth game, very similar to, say, Metal Gear Solid. And those games really need 2 analog thumbsticks to control properly. Now, to be fair, the developers, I think, did the best job that they could with the hardware that they had. But I just never got used to using the left thumbstick to look and the right face buttons to move around. Also, the developer does something in this game that I really don't like, and that is that they use the same button for different things, depending on how long you hold it down. So for instance, if you want to bring up the weapon select, you hold down the left directional button and it comes up. But if you tap it, it'll do a quick change. And that little thing right there can really screw you up in a firefight because you can accidentally do it. So just not one of my favorite things. And then I want to talk about Excitebots on the Nintendo Wii. Now you guys know that I love my arcade racing games, and this is such a good one that is only brought down because Nintendo forces you to use those stupid motion controls. It's so annoying. In this game, you basically hold the Wii remote horizontally like this, and then you tilt it back and forth to steer, and then it has some kind of loop stuff in it. To be fair, once you play the game for a while, it does become fun, but it's never the same as using a real proper controller. And that's a real shame because, again, this game could have been amazing. It's already really good, but it was brought down by those stupid Wii motion controls, and it just, even to this day, you can tell that I'm really annoyed by it. But anyways, guys, love to know down in the comments, what are some of the other good or great games that you think were pretty much ruined by terrible controls? I'd love to know down in the comments. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. You know what game I almost picked for this video? The original Tomb Raider. If you remember back then, it was really funky to use the tank controls. I know we've talked a lot about tank controls in this video, but going back and playing the original Tomb Raider today, it's tough. I mean, it's really weird. And so it's a testament to just how awesome that game is and was that we were able to look past it. But Thankfully, they did some remakes later on.